Hello and welcome back to Down the Slope. We've given you a good little wait. I think it's been like 9 days or something since you've last seen us. But as you can see, I'm joined by Ryan. Ryan, how we doing?
Terrible, man. I've been wearing a hat all day, and as you can see, man, I've got a big tuft of hair that will not go away. So I'm not doing very well. I've been slated already by the two of you. So
For anybody who's not joined the live stream, we always plan to start at 7. Everybody else is always late. I'm always on time. But Ryan showed up on time, and his hair, we had to send him away to get it sorted. So that's why we're a couple minutes late. But join us for the first time in a while. We've got the main man, G, back. G, how we doing, mate?
I'm good, mate. It's good to be back. It's good to be back, actually. I'm looking forward to this. Although Ryan will probably disagree and say it's not good to be back because I've just done a bit of his hair. He looks like Tintin, but we'll need to go with that tonight.
It's like do you remember when Eric Cantona got his big band and then everybody was waiting for him coming back? It was Return of the King. Is that what Greg's trying to say here? It's like the return of the big fella.
Nah, I'm just I'm a small part. Yeah, I'm definitely not the main man.
So, Jay, since we've got you on, actually, talk to us a bit about your opinions of Nick Montgomery so far, because we've not really had the chance to get many from you since he's joined. You've kind of been absent for most of the episodes. So, what are you making a big Nick so far?
Harry, don't need to fucking dig me out, mate.
Of course I do. That's what we do on this show, mate.
No, Joe, I'm very impressed. He seems like he's got all the tools to be a top manager, and that's not just at Hibs, that's in the game in general. So I am very excited about where he's going to take us, and it seems like he can also play a bit as well. So I genuinely do think though he is incredibly good for the club. He seems like a really top guy, and as Ryan would say, he's working class. So,
And speaking of the big man playing, obviously the first thing that we're going to cover on today's episode is David Gray's testimonial. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Hibs beat Man United 1-0, which is incredibly realistic. Scott Brown with the goal. But Ryan, looking at those two teams,
wasn't.
What was it not?
David Gray's
David Gray's absolute clanger for Harry.
Mate.
I saw Scott Brown scored. I'm reading the wrong things on Twitter.
Let's just rip this up and start again.
We're just packing up the night and going home.
Anyway, I clearly didn't watch the testimonial game, but you guys clearly did. So Ryan, talk to me about the game. What players that played there would you take in the current Hibs team? I'm going to get rinsed for that one, by the way.
I love that you've come to me, even though like just before we come on, I said I wasn't there because I was away on holiday. So I don't know much about the game. I just seen the highlights that probably everybody else has watched. Taken from that, everybody says Scott Brown could probably still play. So I think that's your man there. However, he's probably going to pursue something in management. Probably won't be coming back up to Scotland as a player anytime soon. But it was quite nice to see a couple of guys in the Hibs strips again. I've seen the clips of Nick Montgomery putting in a meaty challenge, which impressed me greatly. That's what I like to see in football. So it's good that he can kind of back up what he's telling the players to do.
And G, talk to us a bit about David Gray and the kind of significance he holds for both yourself and for the club.
Yeah, all started with a pre-season game away at Berwick Rangers when he smashed the left winger and got up and stuck him in the bottom corner. So it all sort of started there. And then he just became, I would probably say, like a sort of Lewis Stevenson type, where he's probably doesn't do anything spectacular, but he's 6, 7 out of 10 every week, and that's sort of what he became. And then obviously he scored a goal against Rangers at Easter Road, which is an absolute pile driver. Then he scored a pretty good goal away at Ibrox, and then he scored in the cup final. So he's a proper Hibs hero. Like the term gets bandied about a lot, but he gets it, and he does get it, and he's obviously still at the club, and he's sort of one of the characters you want to have around. Because he's been there. I think his drop-off was probably quite quick, considering his age, but look, he served the club well, and he's still serving the club at the moment, so just an all-round hero really, and someone who will forever be grateful to for that day in May.
And one of my favourite David Gray ones, I think it's a bit more of a niche one than most people point to, but I think it was a game that we won 2-0 where Robertson saved it with his hand and then Lewis Stevenson went up the other end and scored a volley. But for the entirety of the first half, we sang David Gray, and it was literally that for the full first 45 minutes. It's potentially the longest I've ever seen Hibs fans hold the same chant for a half. And I don't know why, but when I think of David Gray, that's one of the moments I go to. But Ryan, is there any taking away the scream Ray scored in the 4-0 game and then taking away the goal, obviously, in the cup finals, or any David Gray moments in particular that jump out to you?
Bromby, maybe. Obviously quite poignant. Going away to Denmark, just outside Copenhagen. Bromby is. I think you were there, Harry, were you? Aye, it was quite a big thing to kind of compete on the European stage. Where obviously Bromby are a decent enough club for their country, so I think that was out with the obvious, quite a big one. And then just kind of the capacity in which he's served since then for the club. After his playing days, I think he's been like a steady and calming kind of presence throughout the managerial turmoil over the last couple of years. I was actually really happy when he came on board as a coach, and he's obviously proved to be quite a valuable asset because he's been kept around by, I think this is his third manager now. So, and CEO Ben Kensel and the board obviously rate him as well. Otherwise, they wouldn't be kind of pushing for him to be part of that backroom staff. So it's great to have somebody like him around the club.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm mentioning the Bromby one. I remember after we won the final, one of the songs that we sung was "Who Put the Ball in the Rangers Net?" Davy. And then we were all a bit gutted on the train home because obviously you weren't going to stay in wherever the Bromby was. You were staying in Copenhagen, as you said, Ryan. So we were getting the train back, and then there was like these two Bromby guys in our carriage, and they were like, "Oh, the atmosphere, you were brilliant. You need to sing us a song." We were all like, "Mate, we've just been knocked out of Europe. We can't be bothered singing a song." And then he kept on going on. So we started singing "Who Put the Ball in the Bromby Net?" Davy, and they shut up very quickly, which was fantastic fun. Also, first comment from the YouTube section comes in from Sibo Slice. What a guy! And he says, "You know, got a hat, right, dog?"
You got a mask, you ugly.
Oh, shots fired straight back. Goodness. But in terms
I like Sibo. He's a good lad. He's a good lad.
He is indeed. What a gentleman. In terms of other things that are going on in the Hibs world, obviously Hibs didn't have any games. However, we did have a couple players that I noticed. Again, I'm having clangers tonight, boys, but two players that I noticed that played well internationally. Were both part of the Australia team. Martin Boyle got himself an assist in Australia's victory over New Zealand, and that game was Lewis Miller's first ever start for Australia. So it's brilliant seeing our players kind of build their reputations globally as well as at the club. Did either of you catch the game, the England-Australia game? Supposedly Martin Boyle, particularly the first half, had quite a good game.
No, I've not seen much football this last kind of 10 days. I was away for a week there. But yeah, I heard the same. I didn't hear it. I seen it on Twitter as well that he was quite impressive. I'm really happy to see Lewis Miller kind of being integrated into that Australia team. I think that serves both ourselves and obviously him well going forward. Potential transfer away in the next couple of years, the fee's obviously going to be greater given that he's an international player now. And I think the experience he can gain from that and become a better player is great for us as well, week on week going forward. So I've been very impressed with him this season, and it is what he deserves. And he's competing with another player in the SPFL for that position, Ryan Strain. So whoever you think's the better player, that's up to you. But it's definitely good to see him on that stage.
And G, what about obviously we got Nick Montgomery coming over from the A-League, and I'm sure he's got a relationship with the Australian setup. Do you think it is important that those guys are integrated into the team? And do you think that Montgomery probably had a role to play in Lewis Miller being put on their radar?
I think I'm not overly bothered about what Australia do, to be honest. I think I'm more concerned about Hibs. But look, for individuals, it's definitely good for them to get international exposure at the international team. I think when you grow up playing football, you obviously want to play for your country. So it'd be a dream come true for Lewis Miller, and it can only serve him well. But my main focus is how he plays for Hibs, not for Australia.
He is just back and he's already shooting me down for my questions. But another comment from YouTube, Handsome Jack said, thought Marvin Bartley played well. As we clearly saw at the start of the episode, I didn't see, so I can't comment on that. But Jack, I trust your judgment. And Marvin Bartley was another one of those players that was always a consistent 6, 7 out of 10 until he definitely was not towards the end. And that was kind of everything that went on during the time that wasn't that Hibs weren't playing. So there wasn't too much to talk about. And we have got a couple of listener questions in, so we'll jump through them quickly. First of which came from Albert Street, and he said, "Do you think Nick Montgomery will be here longer than the average 18 months to 2 years Hibs seem to go through managers? Early days, I know." I think we've had this one a couple of times, and personally, I think it is a bit too early to say. I think we'd like him to be, because if he is, then it means that he's had a pretty successful tenure. But the ideal one is he wins the league at a canter this year and he moves down to a Premier League team next season. That would probably be the dream for me, because we'd be sitting on top of the league with a league title. But realistically, I think it's fair to say we would all like him to stay as long as possible, because that would typically mean success. Any disagreements there?
No.
Awesome. And then second question from Albert, he said, "What's the best thing you like / admire about Nick Montgomery?" For me, he just seems to, it just seems to me that he just gets Hibs. So the cliche that G banded about earlier on today, he thinks that he gets Hibs. Ryan, aware that your favourite thing about him is that he's working class. Is there anything else about him in terms of his managerial ability that you're a fan of?
I like that he's trying to integrate young players from the start. He's fairly honest in his interviews and his assessment of things. And I do kind of like that he's made football for the players a wee bit more basic in the system that he's asking them to play in their specific roles. It doesn't look as though he's making things too complicated for them. So he really is making it kind of easy to go out there and get results.
And G, yourself?
Just like the way that he carries himself, really. He's a very honest guy. Doesn't really seem to do too many amazing things, but what he does works. Like, we've seen that from the games that he's managed so far, that he can get a tune out of the players, and he's got buy-in from the players, which is so important. But he just seems like a really down-to-earth guy, and I think that's probably the best thing about him, is that he will communicate with people on their level, and he won't try and tart things up or whatever. So I just really like the way that he comes across and that he carries himself and presents himself.
I know. I just like the fact that he's got a clear goal in mind. I think 4-4-2 is the way that he thinks football should be played, and that's something that he's tried to instill from day one, regardless of personnel that are there. And we can discuss in a quick second if we think he's going to be flexible. As you may have noticed halfway through G's answer, I did have a bit of a smirk on my face, because Lee Rose hopped into the comments and said, "Did Ryan walk into the butcher's for a haircut by mistake?" Ryan, they're not going easy on you tonight, my friend. But yeah, Albert, we love Nick Montgomery. You let us know what you think as well. One of our favourites, Jack Kell, he said, "With Kenna putting in great performances on loan, do you think Nick Montgomery should look to recall him if there's an option?" I would assume that would be in January, as we wouldn't be able to do so before. So if we could get Noah Kenna back from Shrewsbury, do you guys want that to be the case? Or do you think just give him a full season there, make sure he gets his minutes, and then we could reassess next season? Ryan, come to you first.
I would say probably even there the full season, so he gets the biggest benefit that he can from playing regular first team football. I know that I've always kind of seen the qualities that he's got, and I've kind of always hoped that he would do something for Hibs long term, and I still believe that he's got the abilities to do that. I know that myself and Greg both kind of liked him. Not too dissimilar from Diego, maybe just lacks in the experience in comparison. I think he's got all the other tools needed to play in that role. So I'd like to maybe see him come back with a full season, maybe 30-odd games under his belt.
And when I was over in Switzerland, I don't like to name the names that say things, but if you go to the big away days, some of the people at the club tend to let you in on a few club secrets, which is really nice. And one or two of the guys that are quite senior at the club are very high on Noah Kenna, and definitely think that he's a player for the future. Greg, do you think that the full season's good for him, or do you think that splitting minutes with Diego would make sense? But with Diego in the form that he's in it, or has been in the past month or so, do you think that he could potentially not even disposition Diego this year?
No, he should get the full season. He's not going to take Jimmy Diego's place. And Jimmy Diego has been better recently. There's no doubt about that. But for me, Noah Kenna should stay at Shrewsbury the full season. I know that he was highly rated at Leeds I think some Leeds fans were quite surprised they came up to us. It's not worked for whatever reason. He is a young lad though, so you always need to remember that. But give him the full season and see what happens when he comes back. I think there is a player in there, but you do need to allow him the full season on loan, playing week in, week out, maybe discovering a bit of confidence again. And just getting that continuity of games is so important.
Absolutely. And then back to the YouTube comment section. Lewis Young said, have you boys got your tickets for the semi-final? Of course we do, don't you worry about that. We've also got our bus pretty much full. So we're pretty excited to get the DTS bus back for the first time in over a season, which will be really
We've
good.
We've got a ticketing department now for these big away days, so we're all sorted. Like, we didn't need to lift a finger.
Aye, and it happens to be me, my sister, Craig, or Liam. So you wipe that smug look off your face and you join the ticket committee, mister. Goodness.
I pay my money like everybody else.
You don't pay the stress that I pay. Anyway, Handsome Jack, he said, went to HTC today to meet the players and manager. It was class. Jack, let us know what players you got to meet, and also how is Nick Montgomery as sound as he comes across, because he does seem like a pretty cool guy.
Also, how did you manage to do this? If it was a school trip or something, fair enough. If not, we're going on a down the slope trip.
Yeah, I wouldn't say no to that. I don't know if I'd be able to get up from Tottenham, but you never know. Andy Allen said Kenna seemed really slow compared to Jego, and that seems. I
think that was probably more the system, to be honest.
It's also quite hard to judge when both players aren't on the same pitch at the same time. I mean, it's all about perception, eh? Like, I don't know. Jego's like 10 years older. Kenna's quite an athletic, kind of young guy. You would think he'd have a wee bit of pace, eh?
Aye, and I refuse to believe that anything that happened in the Lee Johnson era that was negative existed, because that was a very troubling time for us all.
Erased from the memory, innit?
But Luzerne lives much on in the memory. Anyway, Jack Kell said, who do you think your top listened to artist will be on Spotify Rap this year? Minimum 2 Drake mentions inbound. I think mine will be Palnatini or Kanye. That's a good one. Ryan, do you even use Spotify, or are you on like some form of like iPod Nano?
The cheeky fucker, eh? Nah, so the one that would be 100% number one, I probably can't say. But other than that, probably Fleetwood Mac, Rolling Stones, maybe. That's obviously, I'm into my bands and stuff. A wee bit different from you guys, but you know what? I'll say my number one anyway. We definitely 100% be Gary Oak. Greg's been in the car, so he can testify to
that. That does not surprise me at all. Greg, who do you think is going to be top of yours? And if it's not Drake, then I think we're going to have a very sad Jack on our hands.
I'd say it's going to be Drake, especially now his new album's out. Yeah, Drake. D-Block Europe will be up there as well, but I think Drake will comfortably out in front. Last year I was on the top 0.01% list of Drake, so I want to try and beat that this year.
Nice. I tend to live in that same type of camp for J. Cole. I do listen to a couple of his albums weekly, so yeah, I'd be shocked if J. Cole wasn't in there. And Juice WRLD has kind of been prominent as well. I think J. Cole will definitely be above him, but Juice WRLD will definitely feature in the top 5. And I'm going to very quickly say it and move on, but Taylor Swift likely to be in there as well. Anyway, moving on to the next bit.
To be fair, Harry, Savage Garden a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine, so yeah.
Ooh, solid.
Very
boy.
good.
Also, this is a cracker. Lucinda Wiley said, hello, Harry, you look very pretty. That's class. And Lucinda is a friend of the podcast, so thank you very much, Lucinda, for tuning in, and you look very pretty as well. Handsome Jack, back to him and his tour of the East Mains. He said 100% all the players apart from Rocky, Boyle and Miller for obvious reasons. I work in club store, and said hi to... Oh, that's Handsome Jack. That's class. When I bought the away top, I think it must have been Jack that was serving me. It's always fun to put a face to a name. That's very cool. Sorry.
And is he handsome right enough? Aye.
I think he's understated himself. I think very handsome Jack would be more apt for him, to be honest. And then Hibs, the man who I keep on asking to change his username, said Kenna didn't even look like he could control a ball. Still reckon there's a player. That's good. And then also request from Lucinda. She said, Greg, give us a smile. Yeah, if you go back through our thousands of hours of recording, you'll find maybe 3 of them in there. And next, Dave.
It's because you is with Lucinda, and that's why.
Understood.
She doesn't just spend their Wednesday nights listening to us, which is
Well, I disagree. I think
Don't
that
blame her.
Lucinda and Aaron have been converted from Celtic to Hibs, and that's the reason they're tuning in. But Dave G, so this is a shot directly at me. Dave said, "Is wearing trainers with a suit ever acceptable?" So let me take you back on a little adventure. We're going to get back to Hibs at some point, guys. But essentially, I was working at the NFL London games when they were at Tottenham.
Oh yeah,
I was indeed, my friend. I was indeed. It was a very good time.
shouldn't have
However,
said that.
when I do those games, I work from approximately 7:45 in the morning when I get to the stadium, and I'm on my feet until approximately 9 at night. That is a pretty long time to be wearing pointers. And by the end of the day, where all the crowd had left and I was just walking around finishing my last little bits, I did take the pointers off and put on shoes because I thought there's nobody left to impress. And Dave G is not impressed by that explanation. So the question that he's put is wearing trainers with a suit ever acceptable? Directly pointing to a picture that he saw of me wearing trainers with a suit.
Can I just say that my biggest surprise in there is like, you must be the only person in the world that works that many hours in a day, lad.
So when was the last time you wore pointers for 14 hours straight, you goober?
No, I'm being genuine.
Oh.
Harsh.
What's your question? What's your response? Sorry.
It should come with jail time, to be honest.
Right, so jail time for Harry. That's fantastic. And then Hibs said that he would rather put sliders on. So thank you, Hibs. Dave G also asked, are all Hearts fans Tories and bigots, or is it just the majority? It's odd how a football team can bring so many together just like their West Coast cousins. It is a bit bizarre, isn't it? Like how you can allow your football team to dictate your views. I always think that about Rangers fans, and I think it is true for Hearts fans. Quite a lot of them do tend to be a bit more on the right-hand side of the spectrum just because they support Hearts and they wear cardigans at the football. So
I think that's where it comes from, though. I do believe that that's where it comes from. You kind of fall into that almost mass way of thinking. As you go to the football, you might see a Union Jack, and all of a sudden you start to then follow that and believe that yourself. Because, I mean, you wouldn't walk past 40,000 people in the street and they'd all have the exact same beliefs. You know what I mean? So it can only come from the people around about you kind of rubbing off on you or being an influence on you. I do think it's absolutely ridiculous, though, some of the beliefs of these people. Both Rangers and Hearts.
And do you think it is all Hearts fans, or do you just think it's majority?
It's not all Hearts fans. Let's be honest, like it's not. So, like people have their own political beliefs, and it's not for me to tell them how they should feel. But yeah, I think there is probably an element that do follow the way that the club is. To be honest, the Rangers as well, but it probably happens with Celtic and Hibs too. But my political beliefs are pretty set in stone, and it's not because of Hibs and it's not because of anything else. It's just that's what I believe. But we're probably treading on quite dangerous waters there. But yeah,
if we ended up talking about certain political views, I think that G could potentially end up with a spot on Piers Morgan Uncensored with quite a hefty debate there.
to be honest, I would love to go on that programme. I really would.
It's just the insults that would fly out that I'd be entertained by. I reckon you'd last about 6 minutes before he started crying and kicked you off air, to be honest.
Yeah.
Or maybe he would storm out.
Well, he's got previous for that. So.
And then last thing on me wearing shoes, Lewis Young said may as well go barefoot at that point. So thank you for that. And Lucinda has brought us back to Hibs. Thank you, Lucinda, for keeping us on track. And she has said, should Rocky or Hanlon start at centre back? So obviously this coming weekend, we are making the trip to Mordor. We're going to Ibrox to play against Rangers. Speaking of the most Tory club in Scotland. And yeah, let's use that as our first question to kind of discuss the game. So obviously it seems to be the case that it's either Hanlon or Rocky that are filling one of the centre-back positions alongside Will Fish. So Greg, coming to you first. Who gets the nod for you?
Paul Hanlon.
Ryan, is it a debate, or do you just think Paul Hanlon needs to start this game?
Yeah, I think what we want and probably what will happen are two different things, but I think the three of us would probably want Paul Hanlon in there for a number of different reasons. The fact he's left-footed, the fact he's well experienced, and he's quite clever in the way that he defends. but I do think that Rocky seems to be in favour at the minute.
Don't get me wrong, I think Rocky has definitely improved, but I think he probably need that balance, that little bit more experience at Ibrox. And Paul Hadley gives you that. So for me, that's why I would be picking him.
Yeah, my main thinking, as I've said, like when we've discussed it, I think that the system that we're playing, it's just favourable to have a left-footed centre back, so it's easier to play out from the back. I think that now that teams are aware of the fact of what we're trying to do, there is a necessity to get the ball out from your feet quickly, and I think that Montgomery trusts Rocky to do that more than Hanlon. It's the only justification for him starting, in my opinion. Some games when we've went a bit more direct later on in the games, that's typically when he's put Hanlon on the pitch. So I think realistically, Montgomery kind of sees it as Rocky's better with the ball at his feet and Hanlon's a better defender. Whether or not that's true, I might have just made that up by accident, but that seems to be the case.
There is another element, though. I think maybe Rocky's recovery pace is obviously a lot better than Paul Hanlon's. Not saying that's the sole reason that he's in the team, but he is quicker across the ground. So that may be another factor. But I don't know.
And Hibs chimed in and said, would pick Hanlon for height and better in the air. Rangers have tall attackers, plus they're not the quickest team, so he would be able to cope fine. Greg, speaking of which, for Rangers and the threats they bring, is there any player that you think Hibs should be worried about, or do you think that Rangers this season should be a more realistic game than maybe last year?
If they quote Dominic Malonga, I don't care about the Rangers.
Well, that'll be that.
I really don't. I think we just need to go and play our game, which has been pretty successful recently. So I don't even need to worry too much about the opposition. We just focus on what we want to do and how we want to play the game.
Hey, and Ryan, what about yourself? Is there any players in the Rangers team? Obviously, Tavernier is kind of always getting himself in amongst the goals, whether it be assists or scoring them. Is that a player that you think Hibs should try and game plan for? Or are you just thinking we need to bring our game?
I actually think that that's a player that we could kind of exploit defensively. If he marauds up the park like he likes to do, we can kind of exploit that space in behind on the quick counter attack. Because their two fullbacks do play high and fairly wide, and our two strengths are our two wingers at the minute. So that's an area of the park that we could kind of get some joy from. I haven't seen anything in the Rangers. I'll be a bit like Greg. Don't really care about them, so I won't watch them if Hibs aren't playing anyway. I haven't heard good things about them. I've heard they play fairly narrow. They've obviously had a troubled start to the season. They've now got a new manager. We had a poor start to the season as well, so I don't know. We've picked up since we got the new manager, so just got to kind of hope it's not the same for them come Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. Bit of a strange appointment, that Philippe Clement. I think the other names that I saw kind of touted around there, I thought would do a bit of a better job. Muscat.
Wee bit left field, considering he has had a number of jobs, and I think he's won one league in Belgium for the self-proclaimed biggest team in Scotland. It's not who I would want as my manager if I was a fan of the biggest club, to be honest with you. He's not really got much of a proven record. Like I say, one title from about 6 clubs. So,
and G, I want to get your reaction to this. I believe that he is the first bald manager of an old firm team since Andy McDowell was in charge of Rangers. How does that make you feel?
Was McDowell the boy that they had at Easter Road when Scotland took Ian Black for a walk?
Actually, wasn't it?
Yeah. Was it not Kerry McDowell though?
Oh, was it? I might have said
up again. Yeah, it was a surprise. Yeah, I don't really think the haircut's got to do with how good a manager they are, but I know that Monaco fans really weren't impressed with Philippe Clement. They did not like him at all. But it's a difficult one because it's a totally different league to what he's probably used to. The French league, it's okay, but I feel like teams probably get a lot of time on the ball, whereas in Scotland you don't. Players are only getting an instant, so I don't know. Like, obviously, I don't want them to do well, but we'll see.
And jumping back to the YouTube comment section, have asked when's the merch coming out. Let us know what you want, and we could definitely explore that. Andy Allen said Rangers are there for the taking, and Hibs said Clement sets up with a 4-4-2 as well, so should be a good watch. So that could be interesting if both teams line up like that. And Andy Allen said, Ryan, he's won 3 titles on the bounce in Belgium.
Is it 3? My bad.
Thank you. Andy is putting us in our place. Thank you, Andy.
Jeez, no, fair play.
Who did he manage in Belgium?
Bruges. Was it Bruges?
Was it not that Union team that won the league? We're not very good to our European football, apparently. And when you look that up, I'm reading comments.
I must have misheard that he'd won it with one team, but I didn't hear 3 on the bounce, so I've just equated that to 1 title.
Hey. And then, so helping answer Hibs' question, what would the midfield be? Let's just kind of go through our full starting 11 and kind of discuss how we would line up. So the defence, I believe that we've said Marshall in goals, and you've got Abita, Hanlon, Fish and Miller. Ryan, give me the midfield.
Jago, Newell, Ewan and Boyle.
And G going up top?
Vente or Lafondra.
I think after the last time we saw, I think after the Hearts game, we do kind of have to go back to Lafondra. I think his impact coming off the bench, I know that's probably going to be when he's most impactful, but I think especially after he's had a couple of weeks off, it only makes sense to go to him to start on this game. G, were you happy with that midfield? Do you think Levitt could potentially be an option, or do you think this isn't the first game to bring him in for?
It's not the game to bring him in for. I think they stick to what we've done. I think it's worked well. Look, I think Jago's done well, so he doesn't deserve to be dropped. And obviously Joseph Newell picks himself.
And Ryan, Handsome Jack asked, if all keepers are fit, who starts for you? Feel bad for Murray Johnson, got recalled when he could be getting game time elsewhere. But do you think that Walcott's our starting keeper at the moment, or would you have you seen enough good from Marshall that he would get the nod for you?
I see, when we brought Walcott in, I was hoping that he was going to be the number 1, but I think since Montgomery and is it Miguel Miranda, the goalkeeping coach, since he's come in, I've seen an upturn in Marshall's performances, enough to say that until form says otherwise, he should be the number 1. He's been decent of late, to be honest, but I don't know how bad this injury is, so we might...
Not a big enough sample size for anyone else. So
yeah.
Marshall is the number 1. There's no doubt about that. Boric just, am I right in saying he's probably played more than Walcott in competitive games, but like he is the number 1. It's just how it is. Not exactly over the moon with it, but that's the way it is. And until Boric and Walcott start getting proper runs of games, and that's the way it's going to be. So.
Well, the facts are Boric has played in 1 Edinburgh derby and he kept the clean sheet for when he was on the pitch. So Boric, you get my nod, my friend. No, I'm joking. I'd also stick with Marshall. But Greavesy said, shame the B-words get a new manager in time for us to go to Mordor. Let's hope the Clement boy does not play with a 10, get 4-4-2 in the bin for the big games. What do you think there's any chance that Montgomery switches from the 4-4-2? Do you think we could potentially see a 3 at the back set up for this game? Or do you think that he'll just stick with his guns and this is kind of the formation that we're going to see by default? So we're no longer discussing formation, we're just discussing personnel week in, week out.
I think he's going to stick to his principles every week. That's not going to change. So whether that's 4-4-2 or whatever, that's just how it's going to be. And we're going to set up and we're going to train and we're going to work on that shape and formation. So I don't think there's any merit in discussing formations. I think what you'll find is that Montgomery will always play 4-4-2. And if not, then it'll be pretty close to it. So he seems a man of his principles and he knows what works, he knows what he wants. So I think it's just going to be that formation.
And Ryan, in terms of the style of play, obviously we do like to play passing football. It might be a bit trickier on one of the biggest pitches in the league. Do you think that we could potentially see us go a bit more direct, try and get Boyle and Ewan in behind, or do you expect us to still keep the ball on the deck and try and play through Rangers?
I would expect there to probably be more opportunity to go long if, like I said, the fullbacks are kind of high up the park and we win the ball back. So I would expect situationally that we might go more direct than we usually would, given it is on. But I wouldn't be against that. If that's where their weaknesses are, then we can hit them there. I'd be happy enough to see that happen. I think you can be effective playing more long, direct balls at times. So if it works, why not? Vente's hold-up play's been decent up till now, so even if we're clipping it into him and playing off him, then that's fine as well.
Excited to see Dylan Vente play. Who are you guys? Who have you missed most over the international break? What player are you excited to see on the weekend?
Oh, I don't know. Probably Vente, to be fair. I've been impressed with him since he's come in, so I want to see more of him.
Joseph.
Always a bit of Joseph action. GM, don't you worry, guys. No matter what John Yule said, G is going to grow those curtains to be as glorious as Joe's himself.
Try my best, mate. Try it.
And then just before we wrap up and give our predictions, just looking back, obviously I gave my David Gray one. That's probably my favourite game I've ever been to. The Lewis Stevenson scuffed volley that somehow hit the back of the net, and we won 2-0 that game, I believe. What's your guys' favourite Ibrox memory from one being there and two just in general?
Scottish Cup game was right up there. Sproul, O'Connor and Killen. That was someday.
Unbelievable.
And the one where we were 3-0 up at half time as well. In the championship, that was better.
I wish they could bring back the day of mine when we used to get the full stand. Like, imagine actually having a full stand at Ibrox and winning. That would be unbelievable. Unfortunately, by the time I started going to games at Ibrox, we only had our wee 800 in the corner. But Ryan, any particular Mordor memories come to mind?
Jamie McLaren penalty.
Corker.
Decent. Aye, decent. It's a place that I've probably not been to all that often. Various circumstances, playing football myself or working or whatever, but that one sticks out. Slivka's goal, decent, but as of the last 2-3 years, I've not really had much success there either, so feels like a distant memory.
The Jamie McLaren one was class.
Mental.
They just scored.
Mental.
Unreal.
He spoke about it on a podcast about 6 months to a year ago, saying how wild it was, like playing in Ibrox.
That was insane.
In front of the Hibs fans going mental.
Honestly, I thought he missed it.
The keeper, legs, they fucking hit the roof of the net.
Was it no Allen's first game back after leaving or something? So everybody was wanting Allen to take it, or have I made that up?
That was his first game back, and he absolutely walked fucking Greg Dockett about the place that day, and then turned to Verde for the penalty, which was so good.
League One, Wes. League One.
So good, but honestly, like Neil Lennon at Ibrox was like a man possessed every time we went there.
Brilliant, eh? Just bring him in for the games.
I was worried that day because Brandon Barker went off after like 5 minutes, and I was like, "Oh no, that's a threat away." But Brandon Barker, I behave.
Yeah, not the greatest career since Hibs, but I was gonna chime on the Slivkover. Whenever Slivka scored goals in big games, I would drink to the extent that I knew I was going to be hungover the next day, which would be called the Slivkover. And it happened twice, one of which was that volley, because it was 3-2 after we just beat them 3-2 in the cup final, if I'm not mistaken. And then also the Celtic game where there was two in the box and one of them Slivka. That was also Slivkover 2.0. Two sensational days, would recommend. But guys, are either of you heading through on Saturday?
Yes.
Possibly not.
Yes, I'm going with your sister and Craig.
Nice little gang there. Getting the car share on the go, of course.
Well, of course we are. Well, to an extent, man. I just drive them, eh? I'm just their chauffeur at this point.
They get the tickets, you get the journey. No bother at all.
That's how I see. I'm sweating in the traffic, Harry. Like actual traffic, no online traffic, eh?
Hey.
Worrying about tickets, man.
Goodness. But guys, just before we wrap up, let's do our predictions for the game. Ryan, we'll come to you first. You're heading through. What do you expect the score to be this weekend? And if we are scoring, who are you expecting to get on the score sheet?
1-0 Hibs, Vente.
Straight in there, no hesitation.
I like a proper solid kind of display, no giving any quarters, nothing at all. Nice early goal, sit in the lead, happy days.
And just before I come on to you, G, Andy Allen said Darren Jackson scored when I was in the home end at Ibrox. I enjoy Ibrox. That's a very Dalek quote, but it is good nonetheless. And I'm glad Darren Jackson scored in front of you there, Andy. But G, coming to you for that same question: score line and scorer if you think we're scoring.
3-1 Hibs.
3-1?
Yeah. Fede, Lafondra and Elia.
Aye. You know what we've missed this season? We've missed Martin Boyle completely taking over a football game and just absolutely romping someone. And as we've seen when he played them at Hampden, he's definitely got the potential to do that. So I'm going to put Martin Boyle double and Ventel got one as well. So I'm going to say 3-0 Hibs. It's not going to be one of the convincing 3-0s where we batter them. It's going to be like we're 2-0 up in 10 minutes. Nobody really knows what's going on. Then what do you got? We'll get the additional goal on like the 60-minute mark, and it'll be a half-empty Ibrox by the end of the game. It'll be beautiful, guys. Don't think that's going to happen, but you never know. You never know. But everyone, for tuning in, thank you so much for listening. Really appreciate you guys joining us as ever.